In what is not surprising news, former Representative Tulsi Gabbard has officially got a job at Fox News. Surprise, surprise, except not really. Now, the LA Times reported on Monday that she had joined Fox as a paid contributor. A representative for the conservative-leaning cable channel confirmed Gabbard signed a deal on Monday and will start appearing on its programs next week, according to the Times. Now, look, I actually don't think that there's anything wrong with being a Fox News contributor. Sure, if you want to, Fox News hires Democrats, and they come on and they fight, and generally, they pick the weaker Democrats to go in and fight. They don't ever actually pick progressives. That said, all right, you want to do that, that's fine. Sure. Now, with Tulsi Gabbard, however, my main issue with her is that she's a fraud. And she has always been a fraud. She ran as a progressive in 2020, and then immediately backtracked on all of her progressive issues that she claimed to care for. For example, Medicare for all. I'm a huge believer in Medicare for all. She's like, oh yeah, Medicare for all. Well, I mean, not really though. Medicare for some, okay, just not Medicare. Oh, great, wonderful. She also, of course, has always had this issue of being very anti-LGBTQ. Back when she was pretending to be a progressive, of course, she's like, hey, look, I grew up in a very conservative family, and things just changed. You know, I changed over time, and I became more inclusive. And then now, oops, oh, she's back to being very not inclusive. And you know why? It's because the money started coming back her way, as well as her newfound popularity among the far right, since announcing her departure from the Democratic Party. Here is her statement. If you can remember, I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that is now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness. Yes. Who divide us by racializing every issue and to stoke anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms enshrined in our Constitution, and who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police. Biden gave more money. And she continues, who protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after political opponents. Again, story came out just yesterday where we find out that Donald Trump had been using the IRS to try to target his political enemies. But please go off about this, Tulsi. And then said finally, and above all, dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Huh. Now, look, if you read that and it sounds familiar, that's because it's nearly indistinguishable from every single random right-wing pundit on the internet and cable news. I mean, it's just all sorts of talking points lifted straight from, again, her colleagues at Fox News, Newsmax. And now we know why. A few hours after the report dropped, she guest hosted Tucker Carlson tonight for at least the second time. You don't get to host Tucker Carlson if you disagree with him. You don't even get to go on Tucker Carlson if you disagree with him. Or, well, to be fair, you might get one chance. And if you do disagree with him, you, for example, go on as Chris Smalls, and you spread a pro-union message, and you decline to attack Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as he kept trying to bait Smalls into doing, and Smalls did not take the bait, you never get to come on again. Yeah, funny how that works. So, now, this is another example, by the way, of the leftist to conservative pipeline, which absolutely exists. It is no secret that the establishment doesn't like the left wing. Of course, they don't like progressives. A lot of our policy positions contradict the will of the donor class, of the donors, the elites in the party, right? The ones that, you know, get paid off by the pharmaceutical industry and in order to fight against, Medicare for all, as well as, the health insurance industry. Now, as a result of corporations that do generally control the party interests, the party leaders, I should say, well, there's really not a lot of money on the left wing. There's really no financial incentive to be a leftist. I should know, personally. But look, that said, at one point in 2016, there was a bit more of a financial incentive. There was a zeitgeist led by a man, you might be familiar with him, with the name of Bernard Sanders, who became a household name. His movement was a zeitgeist that scared the establishment. And yes, while they did manage to shut it down in that election, he had some staying power. Now, they reframed the narrative, of course, to electability, and that same party ended up losing to Donald Trump, which is ironic. But since Trump was an epic disaster, Biden managed to win not only the primary election against Bernie Sanders again in 2020, as well as everyone else, but then, Biden went on to win the election. Now, fun fact, Tulsi Gabbard, where was she in the mix? Well, she was running against Bernie Sanders in 2020 and endorsed the more conservative candidate in the Democratic Party, Joe Biden. Interesting how that worked out. Now, anyway, after 2016 and 2020, those elections, the left is absolutely demoralized. The movement lost a ton of steam. The Sanders coalition essentially just fractured apart. And now leftists are just basically have no power and are fighting each other on Twitter all the time. And that's at least until Twitter implodes. Oops. But donations as well from average people stopped flowing. And a lot of people who rallied around the Bernie movement, they went away. A lot of the media channels, by the way, that were created around that time shifted from supporting Bernie Sanders to constantly just nonstop attacking Democrats. And that's it. Now, what happens when you attack Democrats constantly and you don't critique the right wing? What do you think that draws? What kind of audience do you see? Oh, right. It brings in the right wing because you're going after Democrats. Now, look, I criticize Democrats, but the majority of my criticism is really on right-wing politics, the conservative movement itself. And by the way, when I criticize Democrats, it's because they're being too conservative. So, that said, you had so-called pundits that are progressive or pretend to be progressive on the left, well, that have decided, there's no money in the left anymore. Or maybe the left criticized me a little bit too much. So I guess I'm going to go and become a Republican. I'm going to become a right-winger. And so you have Dave Rubin, who left the left, started doing right-wing commentary. Glenn Greenwald left The Intercept, and he's now whatever he's doing. And then Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard saw her chance to leave her audition being on Tucker Carlson's show, did very well, apparently, and she just decided to show her true colors. Her true colors being she's only interested in making a career for herself on the right wing. Because that's when the money is. And by the way, she left the Democrats to become an so-called independent, right? After she did so, she stumped for several Republican candidates. And finally, well, by the way, when she was stumping for Republican candidates, she wasn't just stumping for establishment Republicans. No, she was going for election deniers. Yeah. And not only that, but while being on Fox, before she was being a paid contributor, she was mostly agreeing and avoiding to disagree with conservatives, except for one thing, by the way, one interesting topic, Russia. Oh, interesting. In March, she argued with Sean Hannity over U.S. aid to Ukraine. Now, Sean Hannity actually supports that. Now, Gabbard says, well, no, we shouldn't send any money to Ukraine. None whatsoever. Let them fend for themselves. Now, look, my position is a bit more nuanced than that because, look, I think Russia obviously needs to stop the invasion, stop bombing Ukraine, and negotiate a peace. There needs to be a peace in the region. I think the Biden administration should be pushing both sides to get together to negotiate a peace that obviously protects Ukraine's sovereignty. And I guess if you can allow Putin to save a little bit of face, sure, if that helps. That said, I also think that sending some money to Ukraine is fine, but I do have an issue with Congress continuously rubber stamping money for war without a second thought. But at the same time, we can't have anything here because it costs too much. Oh, okay. So we have endless money for war, but for, regular people, American citizens, that has to go through an incredibly onerous process and doesn't get rubber stamped. Okay, I get it. Okay, anyway. But there's nuance here. Again, what I want is a peaceful outcome that everyone could be slightly happy with. Because if one side is happy, there's a guarantee that the other side ain't going to be happy. Nuance. Tulsi Gabbard is not interested in nuance. Tulsi Gabbard echoes Russian talking points about how Ukraine basically, just give it up. Just give up your entire country. Who cares? But the reason, of course, it's because I care so much about stopping nuclear war. Well, if you think that it's going to cause nuclear war, then you're saying that generally you think that Putin is unhinged. Because that's the person, by the way, with the most to lose. Utter madness. But then again, the right wing, most of them, like Tucker Carlson, are in line with Putin. And what Gabbard is at this point is a female Tucker Carlson. That's Tucker Carlson in a skirt. That's what that is. Now, one last note here. Anytime that there's a conversation about Tulsi Gabbard that comes up, I have to make sure, I have to note that Anna Kasparian and Emma Vigeland, they had Tulsi Gabbard's number from the get-go. You know it. They knew she was a fake progressive, pulled her out. They got shit on for it, massively. You could disagree with them about a million things. Criminal justice reform, for example, right? I watched Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur debate Olayemi Olurin. I was on Olayemi's side the whole time. Credit where credit is due. That said, right? And I'm honest about this, about my stance. Anna was right. Emma was right. 100%. Called out Tulsi Gabbard for who she was, for who she really is. They knew it. They knew it. And of course, they deserve an apology for getting shit on. But they'll never, of course, never get it. Of course not. But they were right. They were right about Tulsi Gabbard. And she continues to prove it every single day and every dollar she gets from right-wingers.